Are you looking to purchase another home but have a home to sell? Well, in today's video, we're going to walk you through that process. From the outside looking in, it looks like a rather simple process. You just put your house up for sale. When it sells, you go and buy something else. But because of the current housing market, with overwhelming buyer demand and a low supply of inventory, things are moving very, very quickly. So if you're in the position where you do have to sell something in order to buy something else, it might be a little bit different than what you're thinking. So I want to take some time and walk you through that process so that you can make informed decisions as a potential home seller and as a home buyer. My name is Jeb Smith. I'm a real estate broker here in Southern California. And one thing I want to mention, as I always do, is that real estate's local, right? I'm telling you what's happening in my local market here. So in your market, if you have a lot of inventory and buyer demand is very low, it might be a little bit different, might be a little bit easier to go through this process. But where I'm located in Southern California, at the moment, we have a low supply of homes. We have a very, very high buyer demand. And therefore, it is difficult to both buy and sell at the same time. And we're going to walk you through that process right now. So if you are someone who is looking to buy another home and you already own a property, the most ideal position to be in, or have, if you will, as a seller, is be able to buy that next property without selling your property until after you purchase the next home. But the caveat is that most people can't do that because you have to be able to qualify for both mortgage payments. You have to be able to qualify for the home that you live in now, and you also have to be able to qualify for the home that you're buying. And you also have to be able to have the down payment to purchase that new home. And because so many buyers get their down payment from the equity in their current home, it makes it very, very difficult out there for many buyers to go through that process without selling their property. So if you're not in that position, like many people in this housing market, we're going to walk you through what your options look like right now so that you can best navigate them and put you in the best position of not only being able to sell your home, but also buy a home in this real estate market. When it comes to selling your home, you have a couple of different options. And I'm not going to go through all of the things that you need to think about as a seller when selling your home, but there is a list of them. And I'm going to put it in a video in the description below, things that I think you absolutely need to think about before putting your home on the market. But as a seller, you got a couple of different options. You can sell your house and go rent something and have that cash ready to buy the property when it becomes available. You also have the ability to sell your house and potentially rent back for a certain period of time, let's just say 30, 60 days while you go out and find that property. But the caveat to both of those is what happens if the market doesn't present a property to you that you want to purchase within that time frame. Say you're going out and renting something short term and looking for that property, but you can't find it. Or you decide to sell your home and rent back for 60 days while you go out and look for that property. In theory, it sounds really great. But if there's not a property out there that you want to purchase, then you're kind of caught up, between a rock and a hard place at the end of the day when it comes time to move out of that property and have to find another place to live. Maybe you can extend the lease, on the short-term rental, or maybe the seller will give you a little bit more time to rent back. But if they don't, then you've got to move again and make that move while again you look for another property. So it's not ideal by any means to sell and go rent or to sell and rent back unless you already have a property identified or you're already in escrow in that property, or you make it contingent, which is going to take us into our next option here as a potential seller. Now, before we get into that, something I want to make very clear and something that is very, very important. As a potential seller that is also a buyer, it is very, very important that you get pre-approved early in this process. And you might be thinking, well, why do I need to get pre-approved? I already own a house. I've bought a house. Of course, I'm able to purchase something else. Well, maybe not. Things change. Credit scores change. Your thought on what you can afford might actually change because interest rates change on a daily basis. And therefore, you're buying a more expensive property in many cases when you're selling and buying something else. And as interest rates change and your income changes, your debts change, it affects how much you can qualify to purchase. And I've seen it in my career. People go to sell a property and buy something else and then get pre-approved after they're already in the process and realize they can't actually afford to qualify for the home that they want to purchase. And therefore, they're in a predicament of, where they go next. And so as a buyer in this market, even though you are a seller, it's imperative that you go through that process early. Have your agent get you an estimated closing statement with the amount that you're going to walk away with on your home, and decide how much of that you're going to use to purchase the next home, and then have a conversation with a lender to go through that pre-approval process just to make sure you're in line with what you thought, that you're able to qualify for the price point that you thought you could afford, and then you're good to go. And that way, when you're making offers, you're not having to run and get pre-approved at the last minute, especially in a housing market where things are moving very, very quickly. Even though you're selling a home and buying something else, the listing agent on the home that you're buying is going to want to see that you're pre-approved, and therefore you're going to have to do that pre-approval process anyway. So it's imperative that you do it first, and that way you're not, trying to play catch up, and at the end of the day, not, biting off more than you can chew with regards to trying to purchase a home that you might not be able to afford. So if you have a lender, fantastic. If you don't have a lender and need a great lender anywhere in the United States, do me a favor, click on the link below. I'll connect you to somebody, an expert that I know personally that can guide you through that process. Now, a moment ago, I was talking about buying with contingent on selling your property. Now, this is what many people out there in the market want to do at the moment. And I'm seeing people do it wrong in many ways, and I want to talk about that first. And what I mean by wrong is that people have a property to sell, and they want to go buy something else. And in order to buy something else, they need to sell that property. But I see a lot of sellers out there at the moment just looking at houses they want to buy, and then they end up calling their agent like me saying, "Hey, Jeb, I found a house that I want to purchase." And my next question to them is, well, do you need to sell the house that you're in? And they're like, yeah, I do need to sell it. The problem with that is it's not listed. And in order for a listing agent on the house that you want to buy to take us serious, you need your house at least on the market on the house that you're selling in many cases. In some cases, you might be able to get it done. But in many cases, you're going to need that home not only on the market, but in escrow. You need to be able to show that you're a serious buyer out there. And to be able to show you're a serious buyer, you need to show, where that money's coming from. And if it requires you selling your home needs to be on the market in most cases and in escrow, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute as we talk about this contingency process. So if you're someone that's looking to buy, but you also need to sell, make sure you're having that conversation again with your lender. When you're getting pre-approved and you're having that conversation about wanting to buy something else, this is the time where you talk to your agent up front, get their guidance on how to best do this in the environment that we're in right now, because things are moving very quickly. You need to be able to put your best foot forward when making an offer. And part of that is going to have you putting your house on the market prior to actually going out there and searching for property. So that's going to take us into this contingency idea, right? So when you need to sell your home to buy another, it's called being a buyer contingent upon selling your home. And in this market, the best way to approach that is to have your home at least on the market, available for sale. And in many cases, it's best to actually have that property in escrow and have a buyer working with you, with the idea that they're willing to be a buyer and stay a buyer while you go out and find a replacement home. And therefore, you're never at risk of losing your property until you find that replacement home. Now, prior to the market that we're in now, it's kind of been frowned upon to be a seller contingent upon finding a replacement home, because many buyers don't want to deal with that in this environment, right? Because many buyers have not wanted to deal with that, right? They don't want to go into escrow on a property and then you as a seller not be able to find a replacement home, and therefore they fall out of escrow. And again, there's many buyers out there in this market that still feel the same way. But because there's a low supply of homes at the moment, buyers are willing to do things they've never been willing to do. And one of those is work with sellers who need to find a replacement home. So as a seller who's also a buyer, the best spot you can be is to have your property on the market, be contingent upon finding that replacement home, and have a buyer in escrow ready to go and actually doing their inspections and doing the process of their loan, so that if you do find the replacement home, you can just make an offer on that home, contingent upon selling your current residence, but be able to provide proof to the listing agent that your home's in escrow, that the down payment that you're using to purchase that home is coming from the sale of that property, because otherwise you're not able to document that. And most listing agents out there aren't going to take your offer serious unless you're able to provide that documentation. Now, even in this environment, it's going to be tough for many sellers out there to consider your offer unless you're, again, the strongest offer in this market. You can't go in with a contingent offer, buying a property and try to cut corners, so to speak, try to negotiate really hard when you've got a property to sell. You can negotiate and you can do certain things, but when you're competing multiple offers, you've got to bring, your best foot forward. And that means likely making the strongest offer in every way you can, and probably being a little bit more aggressive in some areas because you have this other property to sell. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to not have that home on the market, go out shopping for property, as I mentioned earlier, find the home, and then try to work your way backwards with having to go back and list it, or having to go talk to your agent saying, I'm looking at this house, I need to sell my house. Because the conversation with me is going to be like, well, not only do we need to put your house on the market, we need to get into escrow in many cases in order for the listing agent to take us serious. So, I know there's a lot going on here, and it could get a little bit confusing in all of these different scenarios I'm giving. But what I'm trying to get at here is talk to a professional, have a real estate agent. If you have someone that you've worked with in the past, that helped you buy the home, call them and have this conversation with how to best approach it. As I mentioned earlier, real estate's local. So what some might be doing in your market to list and buy a property might be a little bit different than here in Southern California. But here, you need to have your home on the market. You can be a contingent seller upon finding that replacement property, but you need to at least have it on the market to be able to make a competitive offer. And the reason I'm mentioning doing a contingent sell is to avoid what I mentioned earlier, and that's that sell and rent or sell and lease back option where you might not find the property in the period of time that you're allotted, and therefore you're homeless or you're having to make multiple moves and in a position where you're having to make irrational decisions. So hopefully the information I'm providing here gives you the guidance that you need to be able to make those decisions. But if you're watching this video wondering what I was talking about earlier in this video about things that you need to know before selling your home, do me a favor. Check it out in this video here. If you're a seller, you check this out. But for now, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I appreciate the support. Hope to see you again soon. Have a great day. Bye.